Hey team, Jen here. I am coming to you at the head of week 3. Welcome. This week I wanted to begin with a recap, looking back to some of your deliverables from week 2 and offering you some insights there. And then I want to give you some tips for reading Edward Abbey's Desert Solitaire, which is your novel reading for this week, and also talk a little bit about Christopher Columbus. I wanted to end by giving you some insights about developing that pesky topic idea for your research paper. Um, so first of all, I wanted to start with some reflections of week 2. You'll notice that in the discussion forum, I will oftentimes post my own threads in which I invite students to unpack any issues that I find interesting about the work. And I would really like it if you responded to these threads. They'll oftentimes be short videos, 1 minute or 2 minute long videos. And in these videos, I will pose questions that I think are fruitful for digging a little bit deeper into the text. So you of course don't have to do that as it doesn't count toward your peer responses, but it is a way to think about ideas that can help you to push the envelope in your own analyses. And it also is a lot of fun for me to read your responses and see what you think about the questions that I pose. So keep in mind that they are there for you, and that I would really appreciate that you respond if it moves you to do so. Last week in the week 2 forums, I saw a lot of students were really sticking to the 4 main theories that were introduced in week 2, which is totally fine. That's what you were asked to do. But you remember that in week 2, I urged you as well to think about theories, literary theory that wasn't necessarily outlined in those 4 overarching schools of thought. There are so many delicious branches. Can branches be delicious? I guess we have to ask Edward Abbey. Um, of literary theory, there's so many branches that are just so interesting that aren't touched on in this course. And not all of us are going to be able to say that we fully conform or can be on board with the literary theory schools that are introduced in this course. So I want to urge you as we move forward, especially as we move toward developing our context for the final research paper, that you do have the liberty to explore various types of theory. And I think it's good to keep in mind too that most academics often combine types of theory and create their own sort of brand as they move forward. And I think you ought to do that if it seems functional for you to do so, if it makes sense for you to do this, because it helps you to develop as an academic thinker. Academics, we ought to be trailblazing, we ought to be pioneering a new path through this landscape. And I think that thinking about your usage of theory, which parts of the theory appeal to you and which don't, that's going to really help you to start to identify your unique voice as an academic writer. So those are my reflections from week 2. As we move into week 3, we have our first novel. And I want to put this novel in context because this novel is, for me as a reader reading this, my experience with reading Desert Solitaire is that I fluctuated so much in my reading of really loving the content and the style and the voice and the context and the arguments really that Abby is making, to being really lukewarm about it and feeling like there was something missing from his investigation of the landscape of Utah. And so one thing that kept coming to mind as I was reading was the transcendentalist movement of the 19th century in America, which many of you are no doubt familiar with. I'm talking about Emerson, I'm talking about Thoreau, and I'm talking about, maybe some people would say, Emily Dickinson. And the transcendentalist movement is really marked by what I tend to think of as very obscure markers. What exactly is transcendentalism? Particularly when you compare it to what exactly is American Romanticism. What are the similarities there? What are the differences there? How can we contrast the Transcendentalist movement with the American Enlightenment? And how can we contrast that with the European Enlightenment. So many questions came to mind for me in that context when I was reading Desert Solitaire. And I wonder if those questions arise for you, or if you could keep them in the back of your mind. What does nature writing mean in the 20th century when Abby was writing? And what does it mean in the 21st century? Ought it to mean something different? How does nature writing have value or lack value in today's society? And what kind of contribution does Abby make to bringing nature more to the forefront of our ways of thinking about America, American history, American industry, American landscape, American relationships? Um, all of these things are absolutely present in this novel. There's so much to unpack in this piece, and I can't wait. So that gives you a little bit of a context. One of the contexts that is mentioned in the module you'll see is the context of the discovery of America and Christopher Columbus. So problematic, right? There's so much research and work being done today on Christopher Columbus not being the person who discovered America and being somebody who entered this children's sex slave trade, right? Somebody who is a very controversial figure in a lot of ways. So it's going to be very interesting to see how we can align um, this discourse of early American conquest with the landscape that Abby presents in Desert Solitaire. Where are the connections there? Where are the similarities? And where are the discordant notes when we take a look at that relationship? So I think this week's going to bring out a lot of stuff, and I think it ought to. This week in week 3, you also have to start thinking about your research paper. And I really want you to take it seriously. Last week I gave a supplementary video on context. This week, context is going to play a huge role in what you do. Last week I gave you some samples of contexts of my own, and those are great examples to follow when you're sitting down to write your own topic idea. It should look very similar to the examples that I gave you last week, really outlining the specifics. I want to see how your approach to American literature is going to be different from anybody else's approach ever in history. We all have the ability to bring something unique to the study of this literature, and I want to see what it is that you're bringing that's going to be just really interesting and sellable and publishable and relevant and interesting for your readers. If you need some more insights about how to formulate your topic, please hit me up during online office hours. I can help you to really get to the crux of what you value and what's important to you. And even though you haven't read all of the texts in this course yet, I think that it's very possible and useful even for you to start formulating an idea about American literature before you've read it. It is possible because a line of inquiry should be developed from the core of ourselves, not necessarily from the literature. We come to literature with baggage. It's that baggage that we need to examine. It's that baggage that we need to let guide our approach to the literature. So if you can't unpack some of that baggage, reveal it, you have a line of inquiry in the making, and that's what I want to see this week. Let me see. So those are my insights for week 3. As usual, I'm loving your performance in the discussion board, and I like to see heavy-handed discussion going on. Keep it up, and I will see you here for week 4. Have a great week, guys. Bye for now.